Kikoa's going to howl for us. Let's try again.
Well, let's try again while we're on here.
All right, let's do it. All right,
Randy, we're going to howl.
On the count of 3, we're all going to howl together. If you can get a higher pitch, please really long and high. Okay. All right. 1, 2, 3.
It's almost like a wave. Yeah, I like the wave.
Sweet.
That's how they can see it. They like shove their tongue in their mouth.
We got Wolfer! We got Wolfer! That's what we have! We got Wolfer! Look at that Wolfer! Look at that! Look at that Wolfer!
Tina says, I want it, Mom, I want it.
I know. Here. Not that you don't have enough of it in here. Here, eat it.
Okay.
If I could ask you to not stand on that.
Keep going. I haven't gotten a kiss today. Come here. Keep going. He's gonna go in. What you doing?
Really likes fish. Kikoa and Sakara do not. And so Kenai is 20 weeks old. He's a British Columbian tundra mix. And those are two subspecies of your gray wolf. However, your British Columbian is not a recognized subspecies other than in British Columbia. They recognize it as a subspecies. So he's basically just a gray wolf. And you don't like that, but I'll let you try. Oh, you're gonna try it? All right. She says if the baby's gonna, oh no, here, have a hot dog instead. She says okay. And so Kenai, we got him from, there was a couple living in Florida that had a few wolves living in their backyard. Only wolf on site that will wag her tail for treats. It's a very dog-like behavior. And since we didn't get her until she was 8 months old, it's possible that she could have spent time with dogs or wolf dogs when she was younger. And so she lives in here with Wakanda now. And Wakanda is a 12-year-old Arctic Timber cross. And if I didn't say this before, your timber wolf is the same thing as your gray wolf. I'll use both terms interchangeably. And so that's a cross that you would never see in the wild, just because they live in two completely different areas, so they would never cross paths, they would never reproduce. But he came from a sanctuary where they did have Arctics and Timbers living together, and they had an accidental pregnancy, and so we have him and his brother here, and they have been here for 12 years, and we are very happy to have them. Wakanda here is our largest wolf on site. He weighs between 135 to 140 pounds. He is a big boy, and so as I mentioned earlier, we got Coda here when she was about 8 months old, and we put her in that first enclosure with Kikoa and Sakara. To the size wolf you would see in Alaska, she's pretty average. Micah is a big boy, so he makes her look kind of tiny. And so a lot of people ask on our tours if the wolves in Canada or Alaska are much larger than the wolves that we have in the U.S. They're not. They all average at about the same size. Oh, you are just a pig, aren't you, Micah? And so Micah here is a 4-year-old gray wolf. He is the little brother to Kikoa and Sakara. So he is also from that sanctuary where they breed wolves, hoping that they will be ambassador wolves. He's a little too high energy to be an ambassador wolf for us. He goes bouncing off the walls when we take him out. However, he does walk well in a leash, while Kiara here does not. So when we did introduce them to each other, he was the one coming here rather than her going there. And so she was the only wolf on site to howl for about 7 months. Everyone stayed quiet out of respect for her. And when she did come out of that period of mourning, in the wild, she would not have found another mate. But in captivity, we can change things around a little bit, and we thought she needed a companion. And we had Micah here living in our bachelor pad with 2 other young male wolves. we thought it was time that he grew up and got a girlfriend. So we brought Micah down and we walked him back and forth in front of the enclosure, and there was no signs of, why are you drinking out of that? That's not your water bucket, that's your play bucket. He's like, I don't know. And so, so we brought Micah down, and there was no signs of aggression, so we brought Micah into the 10x10, and he was terrified. He'd be home, he was cowering, and she was being really good though, so we opened the door of the 10x10, and she came up, and they touched noses, and they must have decided that they were both pretty cute, because they took off playing behind those rocks, and we didn't see them for about a half hour, and so we fondly refer to them as our honeymooners.
And do they have regular vet exams?
They do. They get the same exact vaccinations that your dog would every year. So rabies, distemper, all that stuff. And then we have a bunch of vets on call. We don't have a vet on site, but we do, for the most part, we use your typical dog-cat vet. So we use a vet that's in Woodland Park, so he's pretty close. And so for their dinners, they'll get entirely raw meat, but for just treats, we'll do hot dogs sometimes. And so Navi here, we like to call him Mr. Hollywood because he does have a few Hollywood connections. The first of which is that he's named after the tribe in Avatar. Our founder watched the movie and she said the next wolf that comes here, we're going to name him Navi. And so a few months later, Navi came along. But the real reason is because, do we have any Twilight fans on this tour? Okay, so his uncle is the wolf that they used for all of the computer generation in the Twilight movie. And then his brother is the wolf that they used for the computer generation in the Red Riding Hood film. Cool. And so he thinks that he gives him the right to have a big ego. I don't know about that, but he's famous by association. And Tala here, if you notice that she is much smaller in stature than Navi is, she only weighs between 50 and 55 pounds. And she is Coda's daughter from that accidental litter. So she had metabolic bone disease, not nearly as bad as her brother did though. Mostly all it did was stunt her growth. So she is full grown, she is 4 years old. And so she's not gonna get any bigger. But she's actually alpha over Navi in this enclosure. She tells him what's what. And so being alpha, it's not who's the biggest, baddest wolf, it's the smartest. And so we have a volunteer here who's doing a research project on wolf dominance, and part of the project she has this PVC pipe that's sort of on a seesaw type contraption. You put a chicken wing in the middle and then they pull on a rope to try and get it to come flying out. And so it took Tala about 30 seconds to figure it out, and it took him about 6 minutes. And so they sort of figured out their living arrangements for themselves. And they are very happy together. Shunka is very protective over Akela, and he doesn't let her get too many belly rubs from anybody else. He wants to make sure that she gets just the right amount. And so Shunka here, we like to call him our grumpy old man. He was an ambassador wolf for us for about 6 years, and then when he was just under the age of 7, sorry about that, he decided he didn't want to get on the bus anymore. He said, I'm done. And we were fine with that, so he retired himself, and he has been living on site ever since. And he lived on site beforehand, but he would travel off site to go to programs and things like that. And so he's our grumpy old man. Right, Shunka?
Howl.
So your wolves are guaranteed to howl twice every day, sun up, sun down. And so they will howl at other times during the day. It really just depends on what is happening. When we do try and make them howl at the end of the tour, and it is cooler out, so I think we probably have a good shot at that happening for us. But howling at the full moon is a myth. If they are howling anymore during the full moon, it's just because it's brighter out and they can see more, be more active at night. And I'm very surprised that Shunka caught up to see us. He usually is like, I'm napping, I don't care. And so if he was in very much pain because of it, we would have done surgery to correct it. But it doesn't really harm him that much. He gets around just fine. In fact, his favorite game is to have one of our volunteers come into the enclosure and chase him around and play tag with him. He thinks that is great fun. And so he lives in here with Maka Bear, who is 10 years his senior, and she is not handicapped, whereas he is, and he is alpha over her. And he was also alpha in this enclosure when it was the bachelor pad, when he was living with Navi, the big black wolf, and Micah, the big wolf in the corner. So he's not going to let his injury stop him from being the boss of anybody. And so that's kind of interesting because they have been here just as long as any of our other wolves. They've been here since they were about 4 weeks old, and they're 9 now. And so the reason that it's kind of interesting that they are so shy is because these two were actually bred to be pets. They were bred by a backyard breeder, but we were lucky enough to get them here, and so they've lived here for almost their entire life. And even though they don't really want to have all that much to do with me, they are very happy and content living with each other. And so we're fine with that at all. I love these animals here. I would not want to have any of them in my home. A lot of people ask if they're domesticated animals. They're not. They're socialized. They're not going to listen to me if they don't want to do something. They're just a couple minutes early, so we'll let them howl and do their thing.
That alone was useful for coming out here.
The birds too. Wait.
Very good, Sultana.